In this YouTube video, Dana Hatchett will discuss the work of Josef Albers, focusing on Homage to the Square.
I really enjoy Albers' painting because what his main concern is perception, not just his perception, but the perception that the viewer brings to the work and what they might learn from the work to make their perceptions more interesting, possibly. In this case, he's dealing with um, the most mutable aspect of art, which is color. Every one of his paintings shows that color is relative. It's relative to the colors around it, and it's relative to the viewer's understanding of their own perception. Okay. In this case here, we have three yellow squares and one gray square. What's interesting about this painting is the gray square is very different than the three yellow squares, and the gray square appears kind of purple. It appears purple because the yellow brings the yellow out of the gray, because the gray is made up of primaries, and specifically primaries purple and yellow. Okay, so the yellows are reducing the amount of yellow that's in the square, bringing out the purple, and then the square can start to move and interact with the space around it. Okay. In this case here, in this case, it's a little simpler. There are three squares. And I didn't point out before, the squares are not dead in the center. They're not like a target. They're down towards the bottom so that they have a certain gravity and weight, and we're not drawn into the design itself. It's just the color. Okay. And he worked on this series for like 25 years, and it was constantly interesting to him because each homage to the square is like a little color poem with the different colors playing the parts in the poem, the story. And in this case here, we have a kind of a yellowish kind of ochre color and a red color in the center. The two colors in between are child colors of the parent colors. Child colors are colors that take primaries, and when primaries mix, the primaries create a kind of muddy color that's the product of both colors. And being that that's the case, when a person allows themselves to look very loosely and maybe around the painting sometimes, to be able to see what's going on coloristically within the painting, it appears to be transparent and it appears to move. Okay. In this case here, the blue and the two greens, and then the darker blue on the inside becomes an ensemble of colors that bring about movement and a kind of flow. The blue rectangle in the center there blends into the green around it because the two of them are very close in chroma, the color itself, and value. So they, in our eyes, when we look at the whole thing, they become almost one color. And if you could hold that one color in mind, that one color would be a kind of a bluish green. At a certain point, your mind will only be able to hold that onto it for a little while, and then it'll separate again and move. So all of the colors are having an effect upon the colors around them and the colors of the entire image itself. Okay, in this case, we have the two colors at the bottom are kind of share a certain familiarity with one another. The blue has a familiarity with that dark gray, but the dark gray is also has aspects of it that can be attributed to the red square around it. So there's a fight or a balance, a kind of interaction occurs. That's what he means by saying, like his book about the classes that he taught, the interaction of color. Color is always moving and shifting according to what's around it. So the essential part of looking at one of his paintings is bringing your own perceptual apparatus into the image. He's basically creating these things as ways of improving our perception or allowing us to see colors in a kind of very almost mystical fashion, because it's simple. They're simple, like just simple objects. They don't have content. And in a way, being positioned the way they are at the bottom, they're almost like an object which we would look at and maybe ponder and think about and learn to kind of grow with. And in this case here, the blues at the top and the gray in the rectangle at the bottom. The gray is very different. The square. The gray is very. Thank you, Debbie. The gray is only its only kinship is with the white around it. Okay, so the white is a very strong edge or boundary between them. The edges or boundaries are very important in Albers' paintings. So if one spends time pondering this particular image, the white and the gray never really seem to form a kinship, but that allows us to activate the blues around it in the background. And the really good thing about his paintings is everybody, if they spend a little bit of time looking at his work and start to enjoy it, and then spend more time, their ability to see colors move and interact will happen. It's something all of us have, unless someone is colorblind. But if somebody's colorblind, they'll see grays, and there'll be a different kind of thing. Okay. Now, in this case here, this is a very dramatic image because the yellow is like the sun in the center, and then you have white around it. And so the white and the yellow, they're very dissonant from one another. And the blue and the gray around that are familiar, meaning they're analogous colors. They're colors that are close to one another in value and in chroma. And so when you look at the whole thing, the parts of the painting all work together like a little visual puzzle that you are playing a part in. So that, because there's no meaning in them, they are just basically color interaction studies.
And then that makes them like experiences more than anything.
Exactly, Debbie. They're experiences. They are experiences for the viewer. And he did them for many years. They were experiences for him. It's said that he would, every time he finished a painting, he would put it up in his bedroom. So the first thing in the morning, when his eyes were really fresh and open, he could see it and see if what he wanted to happen was occurring. He never uses a brush. He uses a palette knife, and he never mixes the colors. He just gets tubes of paint, and he basically, right from the tube, and he basically just very, very carefully applies the color to this masonite surface, which has a kind of, reveals a little bit of the whiteness under the masonite or on the top of the masonite. So they're unified. They're very mechanical, but beautiful.
Before you say something about these colors, let me say that we did write to the Josef Albers Foundation, and we're told we could use his images for educational purposes only.
Okay. So essentially, each of these paintings.
What about this one?
Okay, this one here. Okay. The green, for me, I mean, when I'm talking about them, I'm giving you my perceptual opinion of them or my perceptual experience of them. It'll be different for all of us. And I've been looking at them for probably 40 years. And I really continue to look them because I like them. Okay. The green stands on its own. The two blues meld together, meaning they're analogous colors. The green has a kind of parent role, it's kind of a child role that is bringing together the yellow and the blues to create the green, but it's a little darker than what would be there. So it has elements within it that are not within the other colors. Okay. Now in this one here, that yellow almost disappears into the yellow around it. If you stare at it and go, oh yes, it's in there. So when that happens, you can see the yellow as a single color, like it's one. There are just three colors as opposed to four, and that is because the color is a disappearing color. It is close enough in value, close enough in chroma to disappear into the color around it and sort of activate it. But then we can only hold on to that for a little while, and then it comes back as a separate color. So it moves, shifts. This is a really lovely, lovely painting here. It's there's four different reds, so there are different values between them, and there might be maybe the yellow and the yellow and the orangish red comes out and kind of activates some of the space, but the whole thing breathes. It breathes because it's a series of transparencies. And when you stand back, I think I've seen this painting before. When you stand back and look at it, it just sort of shifts in and out. And that's the thing. He's giving us puzzles, visual experiences that can improve our appreciation of color and improve our appreciation of the world. It's kind of a gift he gave us. Okay, in this case here, let's say that the previous slide we took the two reds out of that one. It's a little different. The red in the center is a little sharper, a little brighter. The red area is completely surrounded by the blue. And what happens to me when I see it is I'm seeing after images going into the blue from the red, and I'm all because the red, the outer edge red, is very close in value and opposite in chroma from the blue. Not opposite in the sense that green would be its exact opposite, but opposite enough. So when you look at the thing, it's kind of like looking at a star or looking at the sun. It's so bright, or it's so insistent upon itself that it kind of becomes an object that changes and becomes activity. And like Debbie was saying before, it's the action, the activity that the viewer gets from the paintings, but it's really the activity that the viewer has in their own mind, and that Josef Albers is allowing us to exercise and enjoy. Okay, so it's enjoyment.
And this is the last slide, Dana.
Okay, this is a really puzzling one because that cool greenish blue in the center is very different than any of the other colors, and that occurs in a lot of his homage to the squares. It's different, but it's close. There are elements of that outer kind of lime green inside there, but there's also other things. It's kind of electric to me. It's kind of very active, and it moves a little bit because the two grays in grays, the grays have as a basis for most of the grays, they have lime green and a kind of violet color, so that when you put those two together, they separate the gray and you can get a kind of the parent-child relationship with the colors. So in this case, it just keeps breathing. And in fact, most of his paintings breathe for me. They kind of move in and out of my perception. I can't really hold on to them. And basically, they become action, motion, and experience.